whole family votes Conservative. I don't. I vote Labour.
Great.
Yes.
Tell me.
I don't think there is two-tier policing in this country. Like, I've recently applied to be a PCSO. I could never be a police officer, to be honest. But I've pulled out now. I think they have an impossible job. Now, there are a lot of people who say that as ex-Home Secretary, you stirred up a lot of trouble. How do you respond to that?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you very much for stepping up and volunteering yourself to work as a PCSO. Did you say your application's still in train or you withdrew it?
I withdrew it.
Oh, did you? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. But very noble of you to have had a go at least. Listen, you're right. The police do an impossible job. I don't know if you know police officers, but I met a lot of them all around the country, all different ranks, and they are, as I said earlier, they are the best of our country. I'm incredibly proud of them, and the stories of bravery that they're so actually quite nonchalant about, that you and I, well, definitely myself anyway, would be absolutely staggered to hear how someone saved a life, how they intervened in a violent situation, how they avoided danger being caused to other people. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a very skilled job and it's not easy. What about me? So listen, I mean, I think that it's a bit of an easy distraction that people use. Oh, well, this politician said that and they inflamed tensions, or that politician said this and they made it difficult for the police. I think the reality is that people will organise their marches because of their particular cause. And these organisations are very sophisticated. They have networks and they organise people and they call them down, they mobilise. And whatever their different causes, whether it's the rioters this summer, whether it's BLM, whether it's the Palestinian marches, they will have their organisations, they will have their mission, and they will bring thousands of people together on the streets. They will then be responsible for their own behaviour. And I really don't think that you can simplify the issue by saying, well, this was one person who said this horrendous thing that caused the riot to be called, or that this person tweeted a particular thing that aggravated the situation. I think there is an element to do with disinformation on social media. I think that is a relevant factor. But I do think it's over simplistic to attribute blame to politicians who are legitimately elected to speak on behalf of people and to challenge where they feel things are not going right. So no, I don't agree with what you say, but thank you for putting it to me. Please proceed. I mean, what's your view? So you don't think there's two-tier policing. What do you think the police are doing a brilliant job then? Do you think the government's doing a very good job?
Sorry, I've got a cough. Excuse me. No, I don't. I think they're their own worst enemy sometimes.
Yeah.
I've had a few occasions where I've had police involved. Kent Police was once when I was 17. I was driving down I think it's the A2, and I was young. I just passed my driving test, and I'm 37 now, so this was 20 years ago. And I had my seatbelt just tucked under my arm, and I was with my boyfriend at the time, and they pulled me over, and the way he spoke to me was I just cried my eyeballs out. I'm not saying all police are like that, but I thought that I shouldn't have had my seatbelt tucked under. But the majority of the time, the experience I've had with police officers are good, but they are stressed. I do know that because I'm a bit of a talker, as you can probably tell. I do. If I speak, I will engage with them and stuff like that. And I do say to them sometimes, "How do you do the job?" And they just look at me and shake their heads.
Well, it's interesting you talk about your personal experience with the police. I mean, as I said, what my main question is, my main challenge is that we've got the police, taking the knee, dancing the Macarena, doing a race action plan to make sure various communities feel okay. And yet shoplifting has gone through the roof. Knife crimes rising. If your house gets burgled, you're lucky to get a police officer to come and see you and you'll be handed a crime reference number. That is not law and order as I would like it to be. And the police are responsible for that. They can't keep passing the buck. They do need to ensure that people have confidence in their actions. Let's go to the next caller. Stan in Exeter has called in. Stan, good morning.
Good morning, Suella. How are you?
I'm very well. What would you like to contribute?
I'd like to say I think there's multi-policing in this country, and I think it's all representative. I think it depends on the situation. And from a personal point of view, I think Starmer did a wonderful job with the riots. And I think they're right to be called riots. I think you conflate protests in London, what you call the Palestinian hate marches, where there were thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And yes, there probably was some anti-Semitism, there probably was some things that were wrong. And there were a few arrests to a load of thugs going out, incited by people such as yourself, in my opinion, who called them hate marches in London. They were mainly peaceful protests.
Did you attend one of those marches?
I didn't, no,
but
I followed them very closely.
Right. Well, what I would say is I don't...
I watched both sides.
What I would say is I don't agree that I incited the Palestinian marches.
Not you personally, but some of the things you said were, in my opinion, were quite inflammatory.
I think the issue is that actually what we had is after the horrendous attacks on October the 7th, and before the Israeli army had taken any defensive measures, we had thousands of people protesting on the streets of Britain, celebrating terrorism, and indeed there were several convictions for the glorification of terrorism, chanting anti-Semitic tropes, inciting violence, and chanting jihad in the streets of Britain, something that I can't condone at all. And we saw the police stand by. And yes, you say there were fewer arrests. That's the point. And this is what the issue is. The strategic approach by the police, I believe, was wrong. Their approach was to stand by and let these protests play out and retrospectively try and arrest people after the event, thanks to CCTV. I don't think that was the right approach because it allowed the criminality to take place. Whereas what we saw this summer was the police jumping in to the criminal behaviour and arresting on the spot. People were arrested on the spot. They were put through the justice system very quickly, and they received sentences, quite tough sentences in some cases, remarkably swiftly compared to, the general timeline that it takes for things to progress through our criminal justice system. So I think that there is a question about how the police have approached different kinds of incident. I agree. The way to restore confidence, to restore law and order in our streets is for tough policing, followed by swift sentences. And I think that's one of the reasons why the riots stopped, actually, because the thugs and the mobs who were, behaving in an abominable way saw that they were going to end up in prison.
Exactly. But that was good policing. Surely that was good policing. Those
Absolutely.
Poor girls. Happened on a Monday.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember, I'm sure you do, but by the Saturday, the whole country was petrified. There were communities living in fear because they were worried there were going to be these mass protests. Keir Starmer, in my opinion, and the police all over the country stepped in. He put in the measures to bring these criminals to justice really quickly, let the courts stay up all night, and then those riots never happened on the weekend. I think 5 days to get a country that was burning or in fear of burning under control was absolutely brilliant.
Well, we can't get into the details around the particular tragic incident at Southport, but obviously, in terms of the response by the police, as I said, I think there was a bit of a lacklustre commencement by Keir Starmer, but ultimately the riots did stop.
You think 5 days?
What I would also say is we've got to keep them in perspective. Now, the riots this summer, were not as, in terms of the numbers of arrests and the scale of disorder and destruction, not as high as some of the other riots that we've seen over the years compared to the 2011 riots, or even further back, 1981, the riots in Brixton.
They could have escalated.
Those were much more violent and destructive incidents. So we do need to, keep these in perspective.
It could have been worse, couldn't it?
Oh, of course, it could have been worse. It's very interesting that compared to other issues relating to policing right now, could the police respond in as robust a way to other issues of public disorder, other matters relating to violence on the streets?
I think they made 90 arrests yesterday, didn't they?
Well, they made 1,000 arrests in total. There were about 1,000 arrests in total relating to the riots this summer. There've been about 400, 500 charges brought. And as we've now seen, we've seen some of those trickle through the courts to result in tough sentences. A Jewish man was not able to cross the street. If that's not an indication of how hateful those marches were, I don't know what is. Let's go to the next call. We've got Anne in Lambeth. Thank you, Anne. What would you like to say?
Hello, Suella. I'd like to ask if you've ever been on any of those pro-Palestinian marches.
Obviously not, no. As Home Secretary, it wouldn't have been proper for me to attend one of those marches.
So I wonder where you got this characteristic that they're hate marches, because I've been on several. And I've been parents with children in pushchairs. I've seen people that tell us that they're Jewish. So I've seen a whole broad range of people, and I myself, I'm not of the Muslim faith. And I do wonder why you persist in using that term, hate marches. But we all know why. Trying to discredit people having a voice. That's the first thing.
That's not true. If I just may come back at you, because that's quite a serious allegation that you've made there, Anne. So what I would say, it's not about discrediting people. As I say, and I make clear very often, people have a lawful right to protest. I'm all in favour of that. And whatever their cause, whatever their mission, as long as it's peaceful and lawful, they can exercise that right. What I do object to, and why I consider these marches to have had their time, these have happened now for the best part of a year on a regular basis. The point has been made, I think it's fair to say, is that they have been scenes of anti-Semitism. There has been intimidation, harassment, anti-Semitic chanting has been become the norm.
I never thought I would have an opportunity to speak directly to you, Miss Braverman, and it's a delight to do so.
Merci.
I am really, really I think angry about the way that you seem to be comparing the Palestinian marches in support of a ceasefire and the riots where small numbers of people were attempting to barricade asylum seekers inside a hotel and set fire to bins, and there were threats of death. And for those to be put on the same level, I think is a disgrace. Just very briefly, you mention as one of the what you thought was outrageous behaviour of the police preventing a Jewish man from crossing the street. I think it's pretty clear that the occasion that you're talking about has now been shown to be manufactured, and it was a specific, I suppose, an attempt at a counter-demonstration, and the version of that was originally given was incredibly disingenuous. So
very interesting
maybe
thoughts.
Leave aside
Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you, James, for calling in. And I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts. Whilst we don't agree, it's very, very good to have you articulate them.